So this happened about 8 or 9 years ago. My girlfriend at that time and myself went to a popular wildlife park in our county. We had a week of holiday relaxing vibes planned, packed a few fancy wines and our meats and foods we were going to cook each night. Now, having said we took wine with, we ended up drinking one, maybe two a night, which isn't a lot considering, but gets you somewhat tipsy. But this isn't a drunk story. We made our food on the braai, and it was about sunset, 6 p.m. It was winter time. We set our table and poured some wine and started eating our food and cracking jokes as we sipped our wine, and I still remember being so excited for the lamb chops specifically. And then both of us wake up on our bed in the chalet, fully clothed, with shoes lying on top of a perfectly made bed that we haven't touched yet, door wide open, which you never really do because of mosquitoes, lights still on, and both of us had our plates next to our bed half-eaten. Literally half-eaten, like my garlic bread was still on my plate, which usually doesn't survive the first 5 minutes on my plate. We both looked confused and dazed at each other like a shared "what's going on" look. I picked up my phone and the time was 3 a.m. We had missed hours of the evening and literally not one idea as to why. Everything outside was exactly as it was when we started eating. Our half-wine glasses were full of the evening bugs and warm to the touch from standing. We never really spoke about it and think we both just kind of wanted to not think about it, but reading another post on here made me suddenly shudder with anxiety as that night came floating back to me. Even if I had to guess, I couldn't tell you what happened that night. To begin, I was not high when these events happened. I was in a car with a few of my friends driving around to find a spot to park and smoke. These events took place a couple months ago. So I'm a college student in a very small North Carolina town. It's a population of about 3,000 people, and the town is less than 3 square miles, with most of it being one long road leading to and from the big cities. The demographics here are pretty much exclusively old people. One thing to support this is the amount of funeral homes and hearses on every corner. My friends and I have always talked about how it's creepy being that it's such a small town, but it makes sense because the people are all much older. One day, the 5 of us pack into our friend's car and start to drive around. We're looking for somewhere that's kind of discreet since it's still daylight outside, but not just blatantly on someone's property. We pull into a neighborhood that looks pretty typical, simple one-story houses that all look the same, until they didn't. We turned onto a road that split off into a cul-de-sac. The moment we turned onto this road, I got a sinking pit in my stomach, as if we were somewhere we were not supposed to be, like we had broken something in the universe or accidentally shifted dimensions. I remember looking at my roommate next to me in the back seat and instinctively murmuring, "We shouldn't be here." Each of the houses within this cul-de-sac were extremely unique and different. One was a pretty sunshine yellow, narrow 2-story house. One was a wider and more full blue and purple house. One looked like a normal suburban 1-story beige house, but instead of beige it was a deep maroon color, and the last one, all the way on the right, was a dark gray house with black trim. Each of the houses were very close together and had different yard decorations, from big extravagant Easter bunnies and Easter eggs to random gnomes to Christmas trees to wagons all over. They were scattered about like landmines. The dark house had shovels scattered about, but no holes in the ground that implied digging. The cul-de-sac had a long, narrow, grassy median/island that you'd drive around to enter and leave. All of us in the car had an overwhelming urge to leave immediately, so we made our way around the island. As we got around it, we looked at the dark house again. A man stood on the side of the house, facing us but standing completely still. He was a black man wearing yellow with blue coveralls and a dark shadow in front of his face. I don't know if it was hair or some sort of covering, but his face was not visible. We sped off and out of the neighborhood, worried that maybe he'd think we were trespassing and shoot us, something you always have to be prepared for in rural North Carolina. This was the rational worry at the time, but in the moment, we all felt an energy so powerful it could have pinned us to the ground if it tried. It felt all-knowing and maybe even evil. We left without issues, but all of us felt the same pit in our stomachs, like we saw something we weren't supposed to. The weirdness doesn't stop there, though. When recalling the events, our stories all match up until recalling the man in the yard. We all saw someone, but the 5 of us each have a very different description of the person. One of them saw a little girl in a dress. Somebody else saw a woman in white. Someone else, a man with a long beard and a gut wearing what looked like a dark suit. Each recollection of the memory, the person stood frozen in the exact same spot on the side of the house. To this day, we have no idea what we encountered or what exactly happened. It freaked all of us out, and we swore to never go back there. I apologize if this is not the right sub for this, but if anyone knows of a sub where this experience may be more welcomed, please share. Comment. This is not a case of shifting timelines like others suggested here. This is a case of contact. In many, many cases, often posted here too, but most can be found in books about high strangeness, when encountering an entity from another perceptual dimension, the way it will try to appear is in a surreal way. Basically, it will interact with your consciousness and project something that you can comprehend, hence the surreal houses. But when it comes to the entity itself, each person will see it differently based on its own symbolism needs. This was a story of first contact, not a case of shifting timelines. Timeline shifting is personal and usually no one else notices. In a case of a car full of people, that's a case of contact. Aliens that can visit Earth are not people from other planets. Beings that are more like us are unlikely that are able to travel faster than light and reach us here, unlike what Star Trek/Star Wars would have you believe. The actual entities that can travel faster than light are those who live outside of our space-time. And so, since they don't have a regular body to appear here, they manifest with the help of existing consciousness, yours. This is done by almost entering a dreamland. You hallucinate the experience. But that does not mean that it didn't happen. It just means that your consciousness was used as if it's a databank and a computer, and the external entity used that to make you see things that you can comprehend. As for the pit in the stomach and fear, it's not unlike the fear a wild animal would feel when encountering a human in the woods. Sometimes the humans are indeed after them, but most of the time they are not. The difference is in perception and unknown, which creates the fear. This happened roughly 10 years ago. I had graduated high school and was about to begin my first semester in college, but I had a few weeks to kill before then. So I was home alone around 10:45 a.m. Because I had graduated high school, I felt a kind of accomplishment to turn off my alarm clock. It felt great to have a few weeks of freedom of waking up whenever the hell I wanted. My parents were early risers, my dad being from former military work up around 4:45 a.m. every morning, followed shortly by my mom, whose alarm clock went off around 5 a.m. I'm not sure what time my neighbors woke up, but I'm pretty sure they woke up around 6 a.m. as well. I was never fully awake enough to pay attention to the alarm clocks of my neighbors. Well, as 11 a.m. rolls around, I decided it's time to prep something to eat and maybe boot up the computer to play some video games. I lived in a single-story, 3-bedroom house, so it's not very big, and I can hear everything from the living room or kitchen. By 11:15 a.m., I can hear the distinct sound of my alarm clock. I easily recognize it because it always sends a shiver up my spine. I have to convince myself that I am in fact not dreaming and that I did graduate high school. I race to my bedroom and inspect the clock. The alarm switch is set to off, however, it's continuously blaring at me. I hit the snooze button and check the time, and the alarm is set for 6 a.m. Once the alarm is silenced, I notice other noises emitting from all around the house. On senior night from high school, we received these commemorative cheap clocks which had our high school and graduating class year etched onto it. It took me a few seconds to realize that its alarm was going off. I had never heard it before, and I had no idea it even had an alarm function. I basically had to pull out the battery because I didn't know how to shut it off. I was very confused as I walked out of my bedroom. Further down the hall was my parents' room, and I could hear the distinct wailing of their alarm clock going off as well. I entered the room and shut off the alarm clock. After silencing all alarm clocks in the house, I can hear the distinct wail of alarm clocks coming from the neighbors as well. I was absolutely frozen in place, trying to figure out what was going on. Why were all the alarm clocks set to go off at the same time in the middle of the day? A few minutes go by and everything returns to silence. The neighborhood goes quiet again, and I know I'm the only one home out of most of the neighbors. I walk out to the street, straining my ears, trying to hear any sound whatsoever, as I could usually hear the sound of a stray car driving by or the sound of a siren or honking. Nothing. For a good 3 minutes, it really feels like I am the only person left on Earth before the sounds of traffic begin to build up and a distant wail of an ambulance goes by and I'm able to catch my breath again. For the rest of the day, I just sit on the living room sofa staring at the blank TV screen, trying to figure out if it had just been my imagination, a hallucination, a dream, or something else. To this day, I have never experienced anything like that before. As for the alarm clocks, I quickly disposed of my own before going to college, and I'm not sure about my parents' one, but I don't live there. But a few years after, I went talking to my mom, and she mentioned the alarm clock being broken and having to get a new one. We sometimes just talk about random stuff. I have no idea if this belongs in here or elsewhere, but it's a memory that just got knocked loose while reading someone else's post. My mother once owned an ornamental bust. She was quite pretty, actually. She was all white, so I'm assuming it was made out of plaster or unglazed porcelain. I can't quite remember, with a very dark-stained, heavy wooden base. I have no idea where this ornamental bust came from. I believe maybe my mother brought it back from her mother's when she was clearing out her house after she passed. I do remember that we didn't have anywhere to put it and didn't know exactly what to do with it, but also didn't want to part with it for some odd reason. So there it sat on a chest of drawers in front of the bedroom window, looking out of the window. I placed her that way so that she could see out of the window and watch the world go by. I made a remark one evening about how weird it would be if she shattered and broke after looking out the window and longing to be free. I think I remember saying she looked sad, wistful almost. Well, overnight she did just that. She had broken clean in two at the neck. Her head was on the floor at the side of the chest of drawers with her chest and shoulders still attached to the base, sat on top of the chest of drawers. We didn't hear it shatter or her head clunk as it fell off. We just woke up to it that way in the morning. It wasn't a particularly cold night, and the window was shut, so no wind or cold breeze was coming in. I say this because my first thought was maybe it got so cold or the temperature dropped so quickly she sort of exploded. But would that explain the near-perfect neck break? I don't know. I just can't seem to explain it away even after all those years. Weird coincidence or something else? I have one fairly large triangle wedge pillow. I have it by my bed so if my baby wakes up, I can lay on it and breastfeed him at night. It has a gray velvet cover pillowcase over it. A few nights ago, I started my first postpartum period in the middle of the night. I didn't realize until morning that I had gotten a very noticeable blood stain about the diameter of a tennis ball on the pillow. I flipped the pillow over and set it out of reach so my kids wouldn't see and decided I'd clean it shortly. I went in later to examine the stain, and I remember being disappointed because it looked too deep and bad for my handheld steam cleaner or the washer. I forgot about it, and the next day my 3-year-old wanted to see it to make a fort, and I felt bad and finally decided I'd go at least try to use the steam cleaner on it, but I knew it was toast. But when I checked, the stain was suddenly gone. I examined every inch. It was so clean it looked brand new. There was not even a freckle of blood. Blood like that doesn't just disappear. I'm a single mom. I have a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. Nobody else has been over or has a key. I know I didn't clean it. I would have remembered. Getting the case on and off is not as easy as it seems, and I was dreading it. Same with the steam cleaner. Even if I did clean it, there's no way it would look that new. Also, there's no way it soaked through or evaporated out of visibility. I get enough sleep. I'm not sleep deprived. I'm just so confused. I got chills writing this. I keep thinking about it. Where did the stain go? First time posting, but glitches are pretty interesting. Most of the small things I've experienced can either be chalked up to forgetfulness, if I'm honest, or a weird happenstance. However, this last weekend, the biggest and perhaps mundane glitch happened. Some background. It's Mother's Day weekend. The entire family is at my grandparents' house. My grandmother is only early 60s, and this lady's always on the go outside. They've got a decent amount of land, and right next to their house is a large red chicken pen they built by hand, with smaller coops in front of it for biddies they hatch. To the furthest right side is a nifty garden area in a separated part of the chicken pen. They built a door between the two halves to switch which sides the chickens are on to alternate which half of the chicken pen is used as a garden that year. They've lived on this land for nearly a decade, and I'm a regular visitor who is often standing outside of the chicken pen when Grandma goes to collect the eggs. When I say I've walked every inch of the side yard where this chicken pen sits countless times over the years, it's not an exaggeration. The glitch. Cut to last weekend, and I'm following Grandma around, chatting like usual about the herbs she's growing, and she's excitedly telling me about the mountain of potatoes and squash she's growing. We walk over to check them out, and she's right, the garden is thriving. To get to the garden side of the chicken pen, we step around this white, metal-framed greenhouse that's maybe 6 feet tall and wide enough for 2 U.S. average-ish people to mosey into. Using myself as reference, I'm 5'3" and a wide-hipped $160. It's weird to me that this thing is jutting out from the chicken pen because I've never seen it, not even the couple weeks prior when I last visited. Odd, but I shrug it off until she opens up the door and this thing has been used. Like years' worth of dirt, debris, planters, and a pallet of hardy seedlings that are at least weeks in the making. The floorboards are a bit rickety and need replacing. Naturally, I ask, when did y'all get this thing again? Again, my grandparents are always outside doing some kind of something, and they often catch good deals on second-hand things at auctions or in the Bargain Hunter, a local weekly for-sale rent trading newspaper. I'm expecting her to say maybe 2 weeks, a month tops. While I can't account for the other stuff, it's easy to move a pallet of seedlings from place to place. She says it's been there for 6 years, to which I laughed and told her to quit teasing. She's serious and proceeds to double-check with my grandpa, who says they got it a year or two after moving onto the property. At first, I'm sure they're joking. We do joke around a bit, but then other family members start recalling details that don't make sense to me and ones I know aren't true. At least I thought I knew. However, there are things I just can't shake. 1. I have one photo from 2020 where the greenhouse is nowhere to be seen, and one from 2021 where the frame is erected at the very end of their chicken pen garden combo, which is yards away from where it's currently sat. And also, it's just the frame, no flooring, no walls or ceiling. Number 2. The entire family, 15-plus people of varying ages, 15 to 60s, average age about 35, agreed that the greenhouse had been in that very spot for at least several years, if not the entire time. Number 3. The level of wear and tear, even with heavy daily use, doesn't match the condition of the greenhouse if it were indeed new. Number 4. The natural weathering of things around the greenhouse because of its presence, example, the red painted wood of the chicken pen being significantly less faded by the sun where it's blocked by the greenhouse, the settling in the ground, the obvious other materials and add-ons that I know have been there, but now look to have been built around the greenhouse. So, yeah, I'm not discounting there may be another explanation I'm not seeing, but it's giving me glitch vibes. When I was 22, 3 years ago, I was unable to sleep the night before a college final. It was a Sunday night, 10 p.m., and I set my alarm for 7 a.m. to go take my final at 8 a.m. the next day. It's worth noting I regularly sleep through alarms, so I have an extra loud one at the foot of my bed that automatically stops after about 15 minutes of not being snoozed or turned off, which I then have a series of alarms I set on my phone in case that doesn't wake me up. I'm a very heavy sleeper. I went to bed at 10 p.m., but a little after midnight, and spending the whole time sweaty and unable to get comfortable and not tired enough to fall asleep, I sat up in bed and looked at my alarm clock, 12:16. I start to think about how much sleep I'm going to get at this point if I can fall asleep soon. I blink. 3:27. Did my alarm clock glitch or something and wasn't telling the correct time? Did I fall asleep momentarily? I check my phone on the charger next to me. It also says 3:27, so my alarm clock must be fine. It's at 100% charge now, so I take it off the charger and just set it back down. I look back at my alarm clock and think, what the hell? I blink. 4:50. I'm in disbelief. My position has not changed. I've had an unbroken train of thought this entire time, and nothing has changed but the time. I blink again. 6:01. I blink again. 7 a.m. and my alarm is going off. My room is now bright, and I feel like the whole night passed, but I experienced only about a minute of time passing and never once lost actual consciousness that I'm aware of. I only blinked. Here's the wild fuckery part, though. I scooted to the end to turn off my alarm, grabbed my phone to look at it. It's completely dead. I plug it back in, waited a second, and then turned it back on. It's now Wednesday morning. I've missed my final, and I can't account for the last 3 days. I have a bunch of texts from an angry girlfriend, emails from a concerned professor, the whole package. I can't explain how this could have happened. It's difficult for me to fall asleep. It usually involves closing my eyes, waiting a long time of thinking and position changes, and then eventually I just wake up without remembering how I fell asleep. It was like I sat up in bed, slept away random intervals of time without knowing I'm falling asleep until eventually one of my alarms managed to wake me up days later. I wasn't hungry, my arms didn't hurt from sitting up in bed for literally days, didn't need to use the restroom. It is by far the strangest thing to ever happen to me. Anyone else experience something like this before? Hello, my Vickies. Thanks for listening. Sorry I'm a little under the weather, so my voice might sound a little different this time. If you like what you heard and you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. I'm almost at 400 and I'd like to pass that threshold. Leave a comment if you have a suggestion or simply want to say hello, and hit that like button, please. It really helps with the growth of my channel here on YouTube. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description, as are other ways to support the channel if you feel so inclined. I post every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday by 5 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it more than I can ever say. And until next time, be good.